to go into these very quick presentations. We're going to try to keep them about 10 minutes and hopefully allow some questions after them. But if we have a lot of questions, what we do is like to have you reserve them until the end of the presentations, and then we'll have at least hopefully 20 minutes to where we can answer additional questions after that. So so we'll move on to the first one, which is Eric's, and he's going to talk about story maps, which is a very simple way to present information to the public.
I'm Eric Borchard with Agriculture, and like Norm said, I'm here to talk about story maps. Are you going to control for me, or?
If you want, I'm trying to make sure the audio is working.
Okay. What is a story map? This is one of those things that was taken right from the Story Maps ArcGIS site. It's story map uses geography to tell a story about a place, event, issue, trend. The thing that's cool, they can combine a lot of other information, graphs, links, photos, videos, and they're really intuitive and basic. They're easy to understand, easy to operate. You don't need much more knowledge than using Google Maps in order to navigate them. Here's an example of what it is. Story map is made up of one or more web maps, which are created in ArcGIS Online, and then they're consolidated into called an app or a template, and which is sort of a prepackaged format that you can publish with your other thing. You can configure the text boxes that pop up when you click on things, links, that sort of thing. At Agriculture, we have an existing map service for Emerald Ash Borer, and it's pretty good. It allows you to search on an address, zoom in and out. There's a legend. Here's zoomed in a little more. You can see the trees that were infested, the ones that were removed, and quarantine boundaries. Here's a little more. But the reason I bring this up is because our staff member, Jonathan Ostis, he thought that he needed another tool to help communicate where emerald ash borer had been found over time, the actions that have been taken. He fields a lot of questions from cooperators. There are 4 counties, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Houston, Winona, that have quarantines. There are, at one point, there were up to 40 townships and cities that were involved with planning. City of Minneapolis and St. Paul both do removal actions. So he wanted a way to a little bit better communicate the history of how things have gone. So he created the story map, and he just picked it up. I made him and I invited him to ArcGIS Online, and he ran with this and created this in a day or so of just goofing around with it. So when he sends you the link, you get the brief progression. You can click across the top. There are the tabs for each year. There's a description of what's going on. So here's a snapshot of what was happening in 2009. No, 2010. I'll just click through them kind of quickly here so you can see how things go. And now this allows cooperators and anybody to, especially Minneapolis and St. Paul, they can look at what's going on in 2014. They can see the new trees that popped up that were found and reported to us and confirmed, and then they can change their management actions based on what's going on. And let's see, I can click out of this in here. I just need the browser, Internet Explorer. So.
Click up here and then it'll pop up down here.
Okay.
So just click up in the top, start sharing and stuff.
And here it is live. So here's the 2009. There wasn't a lot going on. This was when it was first detected. And there were a couple of positive traps. 2010, 2011. And if we zoom in a little closer, we can see some biocontrol releases where they released WAPs. You click on that, you get a little pop-up, and then if you click on this, this will bring you right to the MDA webpage on Emerald Ash Borer.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is that embedded on the egg site, or is there a link
It's not embedded yet. He's been sending out the link to people that he feels need it right now. Eventually, that'll be the goal, is to get the link on the MDA page for anybody to find, or onto the Minnesota maps. So why make a story map? Well, one, as mentioned, you can incorporate additional media, links, photos really easily. It's a really simple and effective way to communicate a very specific topic. Right there you saw just Emerald Ash Borer data over time. And for the people that need that information, it's very, very helpful. There's several varieties of app template, different map types you can make, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of examples already out there. A lot of good information to go look at and get ideas for how you could share your data. And it's easy. You don't need programming or web development to do this. Little help from GIS staff setting up the services, and he did all that on his own. And there's some of the options that you can do. Now the map that I showed was a tabbed map. There were tabs across the top that showed you clicked each one of those for a different map. This one is called a tour map. And you can, if you were to click, if this was live, you could click on the North St. Paul snowman. It would zoom in. This window would pop up some more information about it. Highlights so you can see. This is a map comparison style. If you grab the slider, you can see the comparison between current yields and potential increase in calorie maps. These are just maps that I found on in the gallery for story maps. I don't have any connection to them. And then this is a timeline map where most recent events can be sorted on time, or it doesn't have to be a timeline. It can be just a countdown type map where you can have a couple of different views and then information about what was going on. That's very briefly what story maps are about. Any questions?
I mean, where do you get these? I know that it's just like a Google map, but I was wondering, how would you create the boundary for Hennepin County and Ramsey County there? Or do you go and use like something to go to the location using the?
Well, for the quarantines?
Yeah.
Well, we sent, that's a service. That's just our quarantine boundaries as a service that are posted and then accessed in the map.
We define those shapes with our own standard geography for the counties, and that's there, because you can't really get that geography from Google Maps or.
No, I'm saying this. So do you have a boundary layer? You overlay that? That's
yeah.
That's
yes. Yeah. And same with the points and those. That's all our data that's hosted and then viewed through the online map. Nothing else? All right, looks like Jessica is next.
Okay, so I think one of the things Eric talked about is how simple ArcGIS Online is to use and that you don't really need to be a technical staff person to use it. However, to create these boundary files as overlays, you do need somewhat technical to do that in the background, but once you get to this piece on how you're displaying your information, it can be very simple to use. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is how ArcGIS Online can be integrated into Microsoft Office so your real non-technical staff can have access to the tools. So we talked a lot about how ArcGIS Online can solve a problem in our work group. And I work for housing finance, and one way we could solve a problem using Microsoft Office is to visualize location-based data that are embedded within our spreadsheets, right? They're all in Excel spreadsheets. And we have a lot of staff who have that who would like to be able to visualize those on a map pretty quickly, but don't have the specialized software or training to do so. And so we see Office integration, and we haven't made this readily available in our agency yet, but I see this coming, that we can use ArcGIS Online to embed some dynamic maps in our Excel documents, and then in PowerPoint later when we're communicating that information on to other folks in our agency or beyond. Some things to keep in mind if you're wanting to embed these maps in Office, you do need Office version 10 and above, and some aspects could be costly, not necessarily a lot of money, but these things tend to cost money. We'll talk about this later, but ArcGIS Online has a credits-based service. It's kind of a software as a service online. Not terribly expensive, but there are certain things you can do that cost money, and I'll talk about what costs money in Excel. So what overview you can do in Excel, you can add a map, add some map content from, overlays, maybe dashboard stuff. You can get that as a service and pull it into your map even in Excel. And you can work with Excel data once you have that in the map by styling it, having different icons. I'll show some examples, grouping data, clustering it, and doing some selection back and forth between your Excel document and what's on the map. And in addition, with this tool, you can create some infographics quickly and actually enrich your data and get reports about your locations from other data that Esri has in their service world. In PowerPoint, you can add those maps you created in Excel. You can just add a static map into PowerPoint. And you can also embed dynamic maps within your PowerPoint presentation. Unfortunately, the version of PowerPoint we have today doesn't have it installed, so I can't show you that dynamic piece, but I'll give you a good sense of that. So I'm going to demonstrate statically how I'm going to map a spreadsheet of last year. We had several proposed housing sites, and I want to compare it to some demographic characteristics that are within the Esri system in PowerPoint. So first, I'm going to geocode those addresses that are in my Excel spreadsheet and create a dynamic map of those locations. Second, I'll add data layers from, you could add it from if your organization has several data layers, or you can get some information and layers from the Esri world and really anything that's publicly out there and pull it into your map. Third, I'm going to enrich that data. So I can take some of that information from those other services and add it to back into my spreadsheet to have additional information. I'll talk more about that. And then I can embed that static map or a dynamic version of it into PowerPoint. So it's kind of seamless in the Microsoft Office world. So here I have a spreadsheet. Now you can't read the details, but this is a spreadsheet of housing applications for apartment buildings last June. And they have address information associated with it, but it's just an Excel document. When you install, and you will need to install if you want to use ArcGIS Online in Microsoft Office, an add-on tool. The add-on tool is free. It gives you another ribbon at the top of your Microsoft Office. So it has a lot of tools embedded in there, and I'll talk about some of those. So the first thing you do, I'm in my ribbon. I'm going to just simply add a map, and this adds a very basic map that I can start to configure and add data and other information to. Because this is Excel, I want to map my locations on this spreadsheet, and I can choose to add a map or add Excel data in this case, so the third item over on the ribbon. This gives me some options. I have to create a selection within my Excel document, and then I can choose what kind of location type this is based off of. Those of us who are heavy geocoding GIS geeks know what we need to get into in all details. But in here we can just say, well, I have an address, I've got a longitude, city, state. I can get other of these other geographies like a county, for instance. In this case, I have address level data. I've made my selection on the map on what I want, or on the Excel spreadsheet on what I want to map So I can just go through a geocoding process, and it will go and add those ultimately to the map. There's a couple steps in there. It'll give you a sense of what you can't end up on the map and what doesn't. So you'll work with it. It's a bit of an iterative process, but it's very simple. There's a lot of good data in those geocoding services. Once you have your layer mapped, so these are my housing locations looking at just the metro. All of these little icons represent an apartment building that wanted some funding last June. And I wanted to work with that, and you can work with this in several ways. You can style it or group it, which I'll show examples of. You can get into some pop-ups, so when you click on the map, you see what information from your spreadsheet you want to show. Here is styling. You can change from several embedded different icons. So I choose my icon, I can change its transparency and size from there. And then I can also group that data. In this case, I wanted to identify those apartment building locations by the number of units. So a bigger icon for an apartment building with more units and so forth. And so you can, there's a lot of options in there on how you can group that data. Finally, you can embed and work with how the pop-up works. So when you click on that map and where that location has geocoded, you can see which of your data will show up on your pop-up. From here, and it's hard to see on the screen, but at the bottom of that pop-up there's a link that says Create Report or Infographics. This is where you can get access to some of the other data from ArcGIS Online to embed within your report. In this case, I ran a report on housing characteristics from the American Community Survey that aggregated data within a mile of that location I clicked on, and it downloaded this report for me to tell me. This report is showing me total population, total households, and just the top part here is showing owner-occupied housing units by value. So I can get a sense of within a mile of that location where that is. So I can download that report. These are data that were aggregated by Esri and then re-aggregates on the fly as how I've chosen my information. So it's fairly quick to get that kind of information associated with the data you have in your spreadsheets. One thing I want to note is that a report like this costs 10 credits, which is $1 about. So to give you a sense, if you're doing these one-off, that's not a lot of money, but if you're doing thousands of them, it adds up very fast. So something to keep in mind there. In addition to mapping your locations from your spreadsheet, you can add other overlay data. And you can add those data either from your organizational account, like the Ashbor stuff. You could add that into your map to show some information, or you can get any publicly available map service that's available in this whole online world of pieces. So in this case, I went to add data. I did the search tool, and they have them broken down thematically. I looked in the policy location. These maps are showing some of the map layers that are in their policy area. These aren't in our account, they're globally. So I'm going to add the median age, and I can just add that, and I can add that to visualize my map. Now my housing locations are on top of the median age of the folks who live in these census tracts. So I can easily kind of start to build a story even within Excel in this case. There's a lot of other tools. One tool is I can turn on clustering. In the last map, you see there's a lot of points that start to overlay each other, and so in this case I can turn on clustering. So as I'm zooming in, these will break apart, but as I'm looking out here at the metro-wide, some of those areas there was just so many points overlaying each other. Now it gives a red dot with the number, and that's the number of points, or in this case housing developments that are in that general area. Just a quick visualization tool. In addition, you can enrich your data. I mentioned that when I was talking about the reports, that you can also take basically that data that's associated with that report and have it added on to your spreadsheet. That's what enrichment is. It takes those data values, maybe from the American Community Survey or other places, and it adds them as columns to your spreadsheet, so you have that information. Now I know this particular housing unit has a median, or is in an area that has a population of X, with the median income of Y, and so forth. I can also do some more statistical types of analysis. I can find hotspots, for instance, and do some analysis that way, and find where in my data points there are statistically significant clustering, for instance. And I can upload then this whole map document that I've created back up into my ArcGIS Online account and or embed that into a PowerPoint presentation. If I were to upload into my ArcGIS Online account, I could then embed that map within my website, for instance. So all the work was done within Excel. Here is where you can go to add your dynamic map into a PowerPoint. So now you're done with your Excel work. You want to present this to your coworkers. You can pull it into your PowerPoint presentation, add the map you want from your ArcGIS Online account. I would like to make this dynamic. I can't because this particular install of PowerPoint doesn't have ArcGIS Online add-in yet, but I can go then and navigate within a map. I could zoom in and out and click on those particular locations and get that pop-up that I configured and see that information just from a PowerPoint presentation. So I think there's a lot of power in doing the Esri ArcGIS Online and Microsoft Office integration, although I think you need to use it with caution, only in that these things consume credits. And so we'll talk about credits a little bit at the end about how that works, but it's not a lot of money. It's just if it starts to get used thousands of times, things will add up. So this little project that I put together cost me 12 credits, which is, you know, $1.20 in the scheme of things, so it's not terribly costly. So if you have questions on Microsoft Office integration, I'd be happy to answer them now. Yes?
So when you finish an Excel document and you save it, what does it save it as? Just an Excel file?
It is just an Excel file. What the PowerPoint will save it is in macro-enabled PowerPoint if you've got a dynamic map in there. So, and I don't think it had to save as macro-enabled for Excel, but it's still just an Excel file.
What happens if I email it to someone and they don't have GIS add-on? Do they see anything?
I don't believe so. I think you need to have the GIS add-on across the board. Yes, back there.
I have a question about the ACS data.
Right.
When you showed the report, you had the column with the error margin and the reliability.
Right, right.
Helpful. Is that something you had to create, or does that come with the report?
No, that's part of Esri's community analyst. And so there's a good white paper out there on their reliability scores. They're using coefficients of variation with that, and there's red, green, what the levels are. But so they've done that on their back end.
Great. And can I ask one related question?
Sure.
I noticed the 5-year data at the track level was 07-11
yeah.
data. How much lag is there in Esri's ACS data?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm surprised that 12 isn't out there, and I don't know the answer to that question, but I can look into it. Do you know, Dan, by chance?
I think it's updated yearly.
It will be updated yearly.
An additional year.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. The questions were about how often the ACS data in Esri's community analyst are updated, and Dan Falbo responded by that it's every year. We should see maybe an update soon because the 08, 012 data are out. And then another question was about reliability estimates and whether we had to create them, and we do not. Esri creates them within their community analyst.
So if we wanted to, we could put in more recent data, right, if we didn't want to wait on.
At this time, I'm not sure if we could embed our own reports in it, because that's something I'm certainly interested in doing as well. So at this point, I think it's the canned reports that we have access to when you're running that type of report. But
can we convert these documents into PDF? Apps you created there in Excel?
Sure. The question was whether we could convert the maps in Excel to PDF. And yeah, we can, just as you could any other document within Excel. You can, and you can also copy it as a static image to paste into any other document that you may want to use, and it uses a JPEG version for that. Yes?
Earlier, you and the previous speaker referred to something being accessed as a service.
Sure.
Would you mind defining what you mean by service?
By service, meaning you don't need desktop software to run this. These data and this software that we're using are all online. So they're run and accessed via the internet. Okay, well, I think I'm a bit out of time. I'll take one more question. I'll move to the next person.
After you geolocated your addresses, can you manipulate the points at all, your ground truth?
That's a good question, and Sandy is going to be talking about geocoding in the next presentation. So I don't know if she'll talk about that, but I haven't been able to move them yet. So with that, I'll turn back over to Norm.
All right, what I'm going to cover is collaboration and editing in ArcGIS Online. It's a very exciting capability, and it seems to be growing quite a bit. We're actually working on our third collaboration project right now. What this one was, this was for the Minnesota Telephone Exchange. In November of 2012, the FCC issued an order that they wanted to see updated service area boundaries from the telephone companies by June 28th of 2013. That's 8 months. That's a very short amount of time. And essentially, we got involved in the process. The good news is we had an existing state boundary file. And the FCC would allow for submission from the state to the FCC, so we could submit for the providers. The big problem there was we needed to have the service providers carefully review the information. The FCC was looking for plus or minus 40 feet in their service territory boundaries, which is a big leap in the quality and improvement of the data. And again, I can't stress this enough, is do we have enough time to do it? That's a short time from starting from zero, having a completed GIS project. So some of the challenges was again, can't stress the time enough. We had to build the agreements, get everybody and all the partners involved. We had holidays, and essentially turn it in. And so we have about, well, actually it's 91 service providers for the state that we had to all work with. And we had to get it in their hands so they could review it. And the other partners were the Minnesota Telecom Alliance, which is their organization, the Department of Commerce, who's the authority in this case, and in GIA, we did the GIS experts part of this, and then we had the FCC. And the whole thing is in the short time frame, how long in June is when we started prepping the information, looking for errors in the data and doing some of the attribute updates and everything else that we needed to do. And then we did succeed in getting a first delivery in the time frame. The only thing is that this was, as you'll see, I have some additional dates on in April, May, and June, is because everything kind of slid, is not everybody is able to react at the same speed, so some of the editing kind of dragged on a little bit, which isn't unusual for a project like this. And at the last second, after we submitted our first delivery, we found 3 areas where one code was wrong. They had an unexpected difference in the data that wasn't foreseen by everyone. So, but the results. The good thing is in this very short time frame, we met the deadline. As far as the cost benefit itself, so we did something in 8 months from 0 to completion. That something would have been, just playing with the data alone would have probably typically been a year to go through this. And then as far as the cost, and this is just the cost at an NGO, is we did it for about $6,000. Of course, because of the time frame, there's some things in there that we couldn't do because we just didn't have any time for it. That would have been nice as far as the data goes, which would have typically, if it had been a year-long project, would have been like $40,000 to $60,000, depending on some of the options. And the great thing is we had high participation, cooperation, and considering we're hitting an audience that isn't typically, they knew their service territories, they knew maps, but they hadn't really dealt with this technology before. We had a lot of happy users out there. In fact, we really only had 2 complaints, and that was one person was used to CAD tools. These tools are very simplistic. They weren't very happy with that. And then as far as commerce, some of the fine editing that needed to do was a little bit more challenging in this product. But that's where I came in at the end and fixed some of those errors that were there. And then as a result, we ended up with this very nice public map that is on the Minnesota Map site. And what I did is I just did a quick screen grab of the end result here, and that's something that is available in public now. So we have this final product, and at this point, we're going through essentially an annual review of the information, and I think every 2 years it needs to be looked at in more detail. But overall, it was very successful. We did it very quickly. It was used by a lot of people that are non-traditional GIS users, and it was a very good success, in my opinion. Any questions at this point? All right. Well, and then I think what we'll do is we'll move on to Sandy's here, and she's going to talk about geocoding in a little more detail.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Don't touch it. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to talk about geocoding here. Basically, you know, Jessica showed how you can bring in data with addresses into Excel, and I'm going to show you how you can bring them into AGOL with screenshots again. And you know, you can have your address data as long with the other data you have in your agency, the dashboard or the housing. There are some limits with putting the data into AGOL. You only can use 1,000 records. You have to have the data saved as a CDS or text format with either comma, semicolon, or tablet delimited, and the street address needs to be in a single field. And the steps are pretty simple then. Well, I guess you have it and I have it. You can go into an existing map or create a new map, and there's an Add button up there. And one of the drop-down menus on Add is Add Layer from File. It again describes all the limits. You browse to your file and you say Import Layer. Another pop-up occurs, and it wants you to match your fields, the field name, to their location fields. You don't have to have every location field that they have in their drop-down menu. If you just had city and state, you could just pick a city and state match, and it would locate it by the city. As you notice up on top, it also has that lat long button. So you want to make sure you have the address button checked, but it automatically kind of sees that you only have addresses if you don't have the lat long. And if you have lat long in decimal degrees, it will also locate put your points out there. And once I clicked OK, it had a warning. It couldn't find 2 addresses, so it will tell you if it does not find everything. And then all of a sudden your points appear in the map. For somebody who, like me, who does a lot of geocoding, I look at points like that and go, geocoding's not that easy. You know, what are these points? And really they're the best interpretation of what's in your database. There's 5 different layers that come out of AGOL. You can have an address point. People are actually creating databases of address points. And then address points are seen as the most accurate, but they're not all the same. They may be in the middle of the parcel. They may be on the house or biggest building on the lot. They could be at the driveway. And I noticed NavTech I've been working with, and they actually drag the parcel point and snap it to the street. And so they're not equal in that way either. If it can't find an address point, then it goes to the street center line. And street center lines are databases that are saved with an address range, 0 to 100, 100 to 200. And then if you have an address like 30 Oak Street, it's going to put it about a third of the way down the block. The problem is sometimes the address might be on that block might be actually 7 to 36. Well, 30 would have actually been at the other end of the street, but it gives you a close interpretation of where that location might be. AGOL also does a street name location. It didn't have a house number, perhaps, and it just puts it in the middle of some kind of centroid along the street. If it can't find either one of those, then it looks at postal code. And in Minnesota, this is worldwide, so in the USA it's the zip code. And if it can't find that, it looks at the city name. And if it can't find anything, actually, and you have Minnesota in there, it'll put it in the middle of Minnesota. So all those points on the map may not be the same. And actually in AGOL, unfortunately, it doesn't tell you this. If you use AGOL through ArcGIS Desktop, it's going to list where it put the points, as well as the match address it used. So if it matched to Worthington, Minnesota, it will have a field that says Worthington, Minnesota. And, here, my database I was playing with was a snapshot out of the daycare provider's database. And here, if you have a good address, I'm showing you bad addresses. If it has a good one, you will really get a fairly good point on your map. But as you see in the first couple lines, the address wasn't a street address. It was a school or a church. So there's no way it can locate a precise location for those. Post office box, it can't do a precise location for those. And that one was also missing a zip code. So it had to go to the city instead. Highway 169, an example of when it located it by a street name. And then if your database doesn't have complete addresses, which I've seen a lot of in databases from people, 433 Cleveland is 433 Cleveland North, South, Avenue, Lane, and so that one it couldn't figure out, so it just put it in St. Paul. Then Forest Street, it actually brought back the address of 655 North Forest, but there was no other forest at that address in St. Paul, so it located it, and in its output, it actually put the North Forest Street. And then you had typos. It really couldn't figure out these typos, so it just put it at the city. There's addresses like 260 East Avenue. East is actually the name of the street, and past geocoders that really had a lot of problem with those types of addresses, but it did find that one. And the two at the bottom, I always thought when it put it in the middle of Minnesota, I said, how do you get a bad address that can't match? Well, often people, when they snap their data together, they're grabbing data from here and there, and all of a sudden, a couple lines in the database got shifted over. Well, those are the two unmatched. The data was shifted and couldn't find them. So what else can you do if you don't have the information like you do from ArcGIS on how it's located? We can look at the data itself. If you zoom in and it matches to a street and the same street is in your database, that's a pop-up menu there, you can say, I think that was a pretty good address, point location. And the other one I actually just map by city. So I have 7 points all stacked on top of each other. So if you have something like that, when you're zooming in, it's not locating probably to a street, unless it's 7 records at the same address. But those are ways you can look to see how good were your locations. The other thing, we've talked to people a lot with geocoding is one of the things we first ask them is when they want to geocode a bunch of addresses is, what is your address? Is it a mailing or location address? And most people we've met with say, I don't know. They haven't ever used their data before for geocoding and mapping. They just want to mail information out, and it works whether it's a physical or mail. So you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're collecting addresses, or do you know what your address really is? I work with Minster a lot, and they don't know if their student addresses are home or school addresses. They just take either one. And so we do the geocoding, and they know their data. Their distribution is kind of not totally perfect. And then I worked with the demography office on last census on collecting a group quarters database, and we found we wanted to get the dormitories in there. And a lot of these universities have a single address for the university. And so that's like a 20-block area for a single address. So Shaughnessy, Speeder, if you look it up, have that same address, and all the dorms and library, and the Sisters of St. Joseph Carolette that has the housing on that campus. So they all have the same address, so you don't necessarily, know when you put your address out there, what are you locating. And so I guess my thoughts, like I said, I do a lot of geocoding, and I would say this is good for a quick visualization of geocoding, but if your main purpose is really to do geocoding, you probably want to find somebody who has ArcGIS desktop and pull it through that way, because it's going to tell you exactly. You don't have to go point at every point to figure out where to put it. You actually will have information in the database. You also, when you get these results in AGOL, you can save it out to a file with the lat longs. There's a couple hoops to go through, but you can do that. What else? And you brought up a question about editing the data. They do have an interface now, but you would have to be bringing the data into the table of contents versus the map and looking over there, and there's a pop-up that says, when you're done with geocoding, do you want to review your results? And it brings up an interface for you to go through and look at your points and move them. But then you need information, to help you move them too, so. And that's my presentation. Any questions at this point, or? Yeah.
On your last slide, you talked about ArcGIS desktop coding. I thought that was removed from the functionality of this version of
No, that's another type of geocoding service that Esri used to have. Yeah. You can now use, there's an option out there that our AGOL locator is one of the options you can go to. But it costs credits, like they're saying.
But it's integrated within our desktop?
That's correct. Okay. So you can go out there and it will give you the match fields and how it was located.
Add-on module that you
No, as soon as you use a stall, it's right there. There's usually when I look, there's two default ones that you haven't created yourself for address locators, and the first one in there is AGOL. And as well as if you have other geocoding services, you can go through those too. And the results will be the same, whether you are going through AGOL on the web or if you go through ArcGIS desktops. You're going to get the same results, you're just going to get more information about where they are.
The online product doesn't update your spreadsheet that you're doing geocoding.
It doesn't.
Let's say you have a street address, and you want to return the latitude and longitude.
You have to go over to the table. It's kind of a many-step process. If you loaded them into the AGOL map, you have to save it out so that it's saved as a service, I believe, onto your table of contents, and then you have to do another step to save it again. And then there's a little option out there, a little drop-down menu that says save as, I think, shapefiles or CDS. And at that point, it will add the lat longs.
We're going to be around a little bit after the meeting here, so if you wanted to talk to her further about that, you can do that.
I guess I'm done.
Unless there's a real quick question.
Yeah, I'll be here later too.
Yeah.
So.
And just be sure to repeat the questions again.
Oh, I'm sorry. You forget when you're here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, this is Jesse Pearson with DOT, and I'm going to be attempting something that every GIS technical person fears, and doing a live demo. All right. So.
Just share desktop tab at the top of it. That's over.
Yeah. That's what I want. Sharing the desktop.
Right.
I'm just going to go to a different, yeah, it's going to go to a different tab. Okay. All right. So at MnDOT, we have been using ArcGIS Online for a little over a year. This is external facing. We have approximately 21 active users. We have 6 groups, and two of them are external. Now, we had a need about a year ago to show our planning and program information live in an easy-to-use interface for the public, for some public presentations. And we found that ArcGIS Online, due to its low cost and the timeliness of creating an application, was the best avenue to create a live application that they could show at public meetings and also send out links in the future. So this is our site. We kind of have called it a map, and this statewide transportation improvement program is the map that was created. We also have several other maps: Transitways Overview, construction projects, national highway system map. So I'll get right into, now this is the public-facing one, which has a different purpose than internal. I'm going to go over the differences between the public and the internal business case scenarios. So this is the public view, and what options they have are, we have some bookmarks. So if they wanted to go to District 1, they can go to see some of their districts. If they wanted to see a particular project, what we can do is just click on the legend. You can see we have coded by year. So 2014. We'll check this one here. Minnesota 247. So the 2 minutes overlay. It gives some information about the cost. It breaks down the cost into what percentages are going to different pieces of the roadway, pedestrian, traveler safety, and then we also have a breakdown of the cost for in a graphical view. And this is all customized that the developer that's creating this can put this in there. And you can also put in links like AirCAD, links to your site, or if you have links to the pictures of that particular location, you can also include that in these. These are called pop-ups. Okay, some of the other options for the general public is you have a measure tool. So you can measure particular areas if you want to, and you have some slimmed down versions of ArcMap that you have here. This is a common tool. You can do a polygon. You can just pick a particular area. Oops, there we go. So you got your polygons. There's a print option, and I'm not gonna go through the print option, but it'll bring up a print option menu. You have the ability to share, and for the public, they can share on Facebook, Twitter. You can embed on a website, so you have you copy the HTML code, decide on what selections you want, and embed that right into your agency website, or if you have another internal page that you want to put that into, you can embed that in there as well. Actually, kind of a neat little story. So we had, for this particular, actually it was a construction projects application, we had someone comment on Twitter, sent us a comment, say, hey, what's the deal with this project? I'm not seeing it. So we were able to go in right away and see what the issue was, why the information was showing up incorrectly. So we went right to the data steward and were able to correct the issue based on a tweet. That was pretty cool. And then if you want to see a different base map, I think we have, let's see here, let's see which base map. We just have a MnDOT base map. If we want to select a different base map, we can select the imagery one, and this is working off of the Bing imagery. So this is really quick and easy to add different sets of imagery for your applications. And then also there's a contents tab. What is this application all about? And you can view that. There's some metadata attached, so if you want to see more details, you can see what we have legal language, so we have that in the more details tab. For a internal user, if it's for a specific business, and this is for a specific business. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna see if I can move the record. There we go. Move this down here a little bit. Oh, okay, how do I move that? There we go. I want to sign in. It is quite a bit different for the internal user, and there's a lot more added functionalities based on your role. So if you're given a user, or if you're a publisher, you have a lot more rights than a user with a login. I'm just going to show the differences here. This is really powerful because you can have one map that serves two different purposes. This is again the same map, but we have added functionality. And if I want to add, and Jessica showed us a little bit earlier. Let's say I want to add some information from my organization. So we're going to find services that have been loaded up from our internal users. So we have some services that you see here: tribal lands, detours in 2013, bridges, construction from 2013, and there's several services that have been added. So you can add those, or if you want to go into, if you know, the comment was brought up earlier, a GIS service. If you know your service, just type in ours here. GIS services. .state.nm.us/ArcGIS. So this is going to call our external facing services, and it should load up all the services that we have available. Yeah, again, this is a live demo, so let's see how long this will just show up. Oh, this is right. We'll see if that'll come back. If you want to bring in census information like what Jessica showed, you can also add that really quickly and easily. You can bring in median home values. We'll just add that one as an example. And we go back to our, so we're done adding layers. Put this over here. And then you can set the transparency. So we'll set the transparency a little bit. And zoom out, and we can do some analysis right on the screen. There is some built-in analysis. If you click on the screen, you can see the median home value over the years, and if you have multiple layers from the census, it'll just circle through all of the layers that you have added. Let's go back to see if this found our information. So it's still loading. But again, if we wanted to add in some of our services that were created, for example, railroads or rail crossings, that can be added. So it's not finding it at this moment, but that's okay. You get the point on how you can quickly add other services from other agencies or your own agency, and throughout the ArcGIS Online catalog as well. So if this is a new application, you want to share this with your group, with your office, you can share this with different offices. If you don't want to share this in public, let's say you've added some information, but you just want to share it within your group, you can pick your group. You just want to share it with your metro district. So you you can select a specific group which you want to share it with, and then if I go ahead and oh, wait a second. Yeah, okay, there we go. So some options are available if you don't have the public viewed, you can't embed it in the website. That was grayed out. There's some of these we're not going to go into all the details, but there are some intricacies if something's public, only certain things work. I'll close that. And then you want to save us out. You've shared it. You want to save it to your group. So let's say you're adding new information. So we're going to add in housing values. So it's a new tag that you want for someone to search, and you can save it under your login account. Let me cancel that. Also, built in right into the application, you have the ability to do some addressing, single addressing. So if you want to just find a specific location, you can do that. If you don't want to do the multi-geocode option, this is just a really quick geocode, single geocode option that's built right into the interface. And with that, I don't want to get into any too much more details. Does anybody have any questions on what I went through? All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to get into the
kind of wrap up.
Wrap up, yep.
All right. Okay, I'll start here. As you can see, even though we just tried to give you a few examples, you can see where that big tool at the beginning there was kind of the way that this can be seen. And this is just a few little snapshots of what we've done with it in the relatively recently here. But now I'll kind of go back to the whole ArcGIS work group what we're here for. Is one of the tasks that we had was to help roll this product out to the agencies. So one of the tasks we had was creating a white paper with governance associated with it. And you know, right now we're in the process of kind of finalizing that document. It should be available to everyone here this month. I don't think it's going to be a problem with that. We just got a little bit of wording to work out. It's in draft form. If anybody's curious, I can send that to them. And what it does is it has these sections here. It has the role of the ArcGIS work group, the overview of ArcGIS Online itself, the state of Minnesota deployment the way we currently have it, administration and management, content management, and then there are some issues that are unresolved at this point that we're looking into or looking for improvements. And then we are also want to have this tied very closely to the geospatial commons, so it's easy to flow from one to the other and make sure that the information is available through the sites. Now, it kind of summarize it here is we have, again, I'll repeat this from the beginning, is that each enterprise license agreement partner has this product available to them. And if they don't have an administrator appointed for the agency themselves, then MinGeo is administrating that site for them. And probably the key features here is it is, although sometimes we made it look very difficult, it is relatively easy to use. It doesn't take long for a person to get into it, and you don't have you don't need access to the full desktop to make use of it. You've seen examples of using it in Microsoft Office, and you can also use just through a web browser. And it has a lot of collaboration tools, and it's really geared to reach a very broad audience, not only for users, but viewers of information. And right now we have the Collaborative Minnesota Storefront, which is an open and public site at this point. It has a small amount of content out there now. And then as far as the white paper itself, it also has guidelines for publishing ArcGIS. There's certain content information that needs to be added to the maps to explain to the people that are using it. Just basic attributes, what's kind of the purpose of the map, like that. But we do have some concerns that we're still worried about is, although we've been told verbally that Esri is meeting the Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA as we call it, until we have that in writing, the state is kind of trying to discourage any putting of information out there in the cloud, because ArcGIS Online, you can put your data out there in the cloud. And then we have this credit issue that has come up a couple different times. Each agency at least has a minimum of 2,000 credits to start with, and credits are about 10 cents a piece. Right now, the management tools for viewing those credits are probably a little more simplistic than we'd prefer. We'd like to be able to track it to an individual person a little bit easier, because as Sandy and Jessica were talking about the whole geocoding of addresses, if you have a huge address database and you keep redoing it, it's using credits each time you do that. And it'd be nice to catch that before it became an issue, because sometimes people will repeat something if they don't quite get the results they want. And then this last point here is Active Directory. It has hooks to be able to use the state's Active Directory, although that's not being recommended right now. What we're doing is relying on the capabilities within ArcGIS to add users at that point. And I guess one last point here is we're going to be around here for questions for a while, so we just open it up for questions in general, and we could have Dan Feldwell from ESRI come up here to also answer questions. But also give us any feedback on how you think the session went, or do you want to see any additional information in any particular areas? Do you see any instance where you'd like to see assistance for using the product? Just let us know. And I guess at this point, I'd just like to open up questions for everyone. And like I said, Dan Feldwell here is from ESRI, the software vendor, and hopefully he can be able to hit them up some of the questions that we may not be able to answer. And so anyone in the work group, you could hit us up. Sure.
I'm wondering about accessibility. Are those pop-ups going to be read by screen readers, or is there kind of a current, if not, do you need to upload a data file that's readily available, or what's kind of the plan?
The question was on accessibility, and actually that's something I spent a fair amount of time on. I worked with our accessibility staff on that. They do have a paper out there that describes the current status of accessibility software, and I also looked at some of the software products to review the site. It's not perfect, but it was by far better than I thought it would be for using it. And do you want to address that in any more detail, then?
We're working right now on the standards right now to get accessibility up to the speed.
Did you want to come up here?
Oh, here so everybody can hear the answer. Oh, sure.
The mic's out there seem a little soft.
Oh, no, that's got it right. Yeah, this is Dan Feldwell from Esri. We're working right now on accessibility compliance with the federal government right now. So we've delivered a number of applications for them and found them to be close but not complete at this stage of the game. So we're still working on that. In fact, just got that this week in anticipation of this. I'd also, since I've got the mic, I would like to make a couple of comments on the stuff that you're doing. I'm not necessarily sure the group's aware of this. In the latest release of ArcGIS Online, two things I always hear is what are credit consumption, right? Because there's a cost to that, and then how do you set up services and et cetera, and how do you go and discover information. But one of the things I want to tell you about is that you do not have to use an Esri geocoding engine to do geocoding anymore. You can, if the state of Minnesota or somebody builds a geocoding engine, you can use that, and then you can geocode 1 million records if you want to at no cost, no credit. So the other one that's just available as well is routing. So before, if you're going to do a routing, multi-point routing for inspections or whatnot, and you went to the Esri, use the Esri tool, there would be a cost associated with it at some fraction of a credit. Now, if you have your own routing service available, your own tool, at the startup, and this came out in April, you'll be able to use that, and again, there'll be no credit charges for that. Okay. Third point that I've got is that we've got practitioners and we've got people who appear to have some knowledge of the Esri platform. But again, the offer is on the table right now is that if you would like Esri to come in here and go through the latest, we're getting a new release of this technology out in July. It has some more enhancements to it. Esri's cycle for this is every quarter now, quarterly enhancements to this to be able to add one more functionality, more usability. We're really working on collaborative environments on how to get multi-jurisdictional collaboration within work groups and whatnot. If you're at all interested, after July, I'll be more than happy to bring our product specialists in here and myself to sort of give you an overview. I think it's important for you to understand where Esri's coming from on this product. Esri sees their whole product line as something called a platform, and this is just one of the tools that helps, that we're hoping will be utilized to sort of empower non-programmatic, non-analyst people to begin to use the technology. So it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination now, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was 2 years ago. So just keep, encourage people to keep looking forward. For those of you who are the practitioners of using ArcGIS Online, I just was at a debrief yesterday, internal debrief from Esri, and I encourage you to go out to the doc.esri.com page. Esri has just, in the last couple of weeks, has massively changed the way that it's reporting information and upgrades to this product. And in it, what I think was the most valuable was that in there is a matrix that tells you functionality that we are working on, which will be going to the next release, functionality that has been accepted, which will be coming out in the next release or later releases of that. So you get a better understanding on where we're going with the product and what tools are coming out there. And also there's a form in there for you to suggest something if you need it to be done. Fifth point, now it just came to my head, dealing with FSMA compliance. Right now with FSMA, we are, I got to make sure I get this right. We are compliant, but we have not been certified. So where it is right now is that they've taken a look at it, but I guess you need a gold star or some type of a seal that has to happen from the feds. That has not happened, but we have been told by our resources in DC and whatnot that we are compliant. But again, I would wait till we get the official banner, but nonetheless, that's where we're at. Okay?
Any other questions? Did you want?
No, I want to.
Okay. Okay.
For you two in particular who have deployed with a wide variety of customers, have you had any experiences or problems with browser compatibility?
Yes.
Hold.
If you haven't, what browsers have you seen been used successfully? So it's just
okay. The question here is browser issues and compatibility issues. Well, the sad thing is that most people, some agencies are limited just Internet Explorer, and if you use Internet Explorer, you should have the more recent versions, the better. Because I threw an informal poll out there to the work group, and like I said, this is purely just throwing it out to the group, informal, and it was pretty universal. Is that most things are a little bit better than Internet Explorer. Some are quite a bit better than Internet Explorer. Probably the two most popular ones are Chrome and Firefox, and those seem to work the best consistently across platforms. But Internet Explorer, like I said, if you have a recent version, it seems to work fine too. I've just occasionally had problems where it doesn't respond the way I'd like it, and I guess Dan Felbo from Esri would also like to comment on that, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesse, you got the comment? Go ahead.
So I've had some experience with this. When you're working outside of a service, uploading points or polygons, it can't handle a certain amount. There's a certain amount, a threshold that Internet Explorer will just bomb out on. So my suggestion is put it in a service if you have a large amount of data, and that will work a lot better in Internet Explorer. Chrome does work. I found the best. So I have some good experience with both environments.
I might as well add my 2 cents worth. I'm working on an ArcGIS Online internal thing at City of Chicago, so we're getting crime data in upwards of 30 to 40,000 content cards a day. And just to echo this, Chrome and Firefox work. If you're going to use IE, it has to be 10 or better. Anything below that, and you'll go down in flames. Okay.
I mean, to clarify, and you guys can repeat this, I think it's probably when we're talking about a lot of the big transactions and collaboration that you run into a problem, whereas somebody using IE9 to consume a basic map is probably going to be fine. But they might run into some limitations with the editing and stuff that you were talking about. Would you confirm that?
Yeah, we haven't done too much editing, but I found in if you create, there's the web map, and then from the web map you can make the application. I found that the web map is more stable than the application. We have, especially in Internet Explorer, the application won't show up with large amounts of, if someone just uploads a shapefile, that won't show up. But in the web map, that does, and it has to do with the JavaScript backend.
And I worked with a lot, this is Norman Anderson again from NGO. I've worked with a few people that actually do the editing, and one of the first things I do is if they encountered a problem, I say, do you have another browser that you have access to? And usually that resolves the problem. So I just steer them to another browser. Because I know in that informal interview, you know, people even said Opera is okay, you know, any of those other offshoots, Safari is okay. Especially, like I said, just to echo Dan's comments, is older versions of Internet Explorer are very problematic. Any other questions?
I think if you're editing maps, I think it's preferable that you use desktop rather than online, I think.
Yes, well, it really depends on who's going to be using it. But yeah, if you have a choice, desktop would be much better because it has much better tools for doing it, and you can maintain the relationship between the features a lot better. But in the case like I did with the telephone exchange boundaries, it was really the only way to get the information to the people, to all those 90 different providers that needed to access information and draw the boundaries. You know, you just got to expect a little bit more data cleanup at the end. I think the #1 complaint that was surfaced is it was sometimes too easy to grab the feature you're drawing and drag it to another location. That would occasionally happen. But like I said, if people are doing it online, you just got to plan for a little additional time for cleanup at the end. It still has, I think, I was kind of surprised at how well it could work online. But yes, if you have a choice between the two and you want it with very little cleanup at the end, desktop would be better. But it will work in browsers. Yes, these were non-GIS people, so they did not know about things like topology and anything else like that. They were just drawing the boundaries.
And just echoing that because I'm dealing with what is Dan Felbo from Esri again. One thing you got to understand is that it's not a replacement for doing hardcore analytical boundary editing for roads or parcels or anything else, #1. However, one of our best templates, now you heard, who said templates at the very beginning? I forget, was that Norm? Oh, there, Eric said. So that there are templates out there. One of our best download template is something called the Collector app, and what that is it's an editing application that can be, and why it's so popular is that it will run on any device. So it'll run on your smartphone, it'll run on iPad, Android devices, as well as a laptop. Well, so why is this so popular? Because a number of people And a lot of local governments in particular are taking this, they're configuring this collector app, which you could control the features of which you're going to be editing and what they're doing with it. And they can, any device like this suddenly becomes an editor, so when they go in there and find a valve that needs to be turned for the fire department, they can go into this application, turn it on, and just toggle between yes and no, and it goes back to the centralized database and can be changed. So it's one of our most popular downloadable applications or templates that we've got.
I have an example right here if anyone wants to see it afterwards.
Any more questions? Yes, Scott?
No, I'm going to ask this. Now that you're trying to move this into other agencies, like we're trying to do this as part of education into school districts, are you going to have training, as we talked about, maybe having an intro RTS online training, or maybe through NGO or some collaboration?
Essentially, this is a question about training, and the RTS Online work group is already looking at training. We're looking at existing things that are out, that are available for free for Esri, because they have a lot of good videos out there for a lot of different components. And then we're also reviewing some of the other agencies and counties that are also doing training and reviewing their materials. So we're starting to build those training type materials, and we'll probably do some recommendations, and then we may do some custom stuff beyond that. So we're just at the beginning stages of that conversation. We're really starting the process now, but we are already looking at what training is currently available, because I think there's a lot of the initial areas are pretty well covered, and we don't want to create anything new. Probably look at existing materials first. And then, do you have anything else to add?
One more thing, since Scott Danfeld again from Esri. One thing is that for most of the normal users, I would just highly recommend that we've got a ton of stuff out there that's free. Just go use it. Most of the classes that we've got for configuring ArcGIS Online are probably for the developer type people on the back end to sort of administrate it. So we'll deal with it. Secondly, for you specifically, my company has just donated, you've probably heard about this, but every school district in the country gets a subscription of this. The only reason I bring that up, so that's 300,000 schools, 350,000 schools are going to get this for free. But my point is that we're creating specified or specific training to support that, both from an administrative standpoint and from an end user standpoint for curriculum and everything else. So that's supposed to be, we're working on it hard, so it's supposed to be ready by our user conference in July, so it's 6 weeks out. So Scott, keep your eyeballs peeled on the web. I mean, we're making, we're obviously proclaiming this announcement, so keep your eyeballs on that.
This is Norman Ashton from NGO again, and I'd like to just add one thing. Essentially, that's where I spent most of my time when we first started looking at this project, is I went out there and I just grabbed all the videos that were available and started watching them. They have, like I said, a surprising amount of information that's out there, and it sounds like they're going to be adding to it greatly. So, again, we'll have to review those materials and maybe have to build kind of a recommended list and an order list of what people can take, and then see what we need to do to fill in any gaps that we see as a state. Yes?
The University of Minnesota Education. I've been to some of their workshops, but they have an RTS Online one. I haven't been to it, but that might be.
That's what we're using for school districts.
Yeah, the comment was that the university has some training that's available. Any other questions? Sure.
Is there like a statewide resource for technical assistance, like for online but also desktop? But our agency doesn't have any like GIS specialists.
Did you want to address that in a bigger? Dan Ross is going to come up here and address it more fully.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what agency are you from? Okay. Yeah, we know you folks are just getting started over there in corrections. So you can, there is a statewide email that anybody can send a question to. It's gisinfo.mngeo.state.mn.us. And we monitor that all the time. There's several people in the office that monitor it. And somebody will get you an answer to your question. So as the roles start to change and we start to optimize here a little bit in state government, you're going to see more of that sort of thing happening. So I'm going to turn it back to Norm, but I would like 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, I guess we're just about done. The other thing is too is that, like corrections, I'm the administrator for the corrections site, the ArcGIS, I'm the administrator for that. So you can also contact me about that, about your specific needs there, for ArcGIS online, that is. But then, like Dan said, we have that email. And I guess at this point, do we have any other quick questions? Otherwise, you can catch us after this is done too. But
one question right here. I mean, the problem I run into is, I mean, at least I ran into previously, is that when you have this problem of geocoding with 1,000 addresses with this process, I think if you have a huge database like 65,000, I'm just going to have 100,000 cases geocode. I think then even you have the money for it or whatever it is, it's going to be a problematic thing. So what would be the solution if you're working with large databases? What's the plan you have in mind?
So the question was about geocoding large databases. This is Dan Ross from MnGeo again. MnGeo is setting up a statewide geocoding service that all of you who will fall under our ELA will have access to. Maybe that's a good topic for one of our next sessions like this, to go through that and show folks what that is and how to access it and that sort of thing. So there will be one coming. We're working out the final details. There'll also probably be USPS verification service that'll be set up. That's a little bit farther down the road, but we'll start with the geocoder, and that should probably be available in the next month or so to roll out and get folks trained up. So.
One more question right here. I mean, the idea is also we are looking for consistent, standardized boundary layers for various products. I mean, the location for that would be ideal to see. I mean, for various things we do.
So the question was about where do I find boundary layers consistent boundary layers for using in geospatial or other things. The Minnesota GeoCommons is going to roll out at the end of this month. That's going to be the place to start finding geospatial data for all state agencies in Minnesota. It's going to get added to over time. It won't be fully populated, but gisdata.mn.gov is where it's going to be, and that will replace the agency sites in Minnesota. So watch that for changes over time, and additional data would probably be added weekly, certainly monthly and beyond. So the first 7 agencies, which are the core large agencies, are scheduled to be in right now by the end of September. So that would be the place that you would find those boundaries. There are several boundary layers you can get to on the Geo Gateway, and if you want to touch base with somebody afterwards, we can give you a URL where you can find that. I think we're close to wrapping up. There's one more question that I have for this group. We do value your feedback, and Norm's not going to like that, but I'm going to ask you to send it all to him. Norm Anderson at state.mn.us. We want to know how the session was for you. We want to know of other topics that would be useful to you. And most importantly, we want to know how to get this information out to the business. So it's great when the geospatial professionals know about it, but we really need to get it into the business and beyond that. So we hope that you'll take some of that back to your organization, and as these come up in the future, you will share that much more broadly with your business. So Norm Anderson, that's state.mn.us. If you would send him your feedback, or did you already mention something and I missed it?
No, I kind of asked for feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Norm.Anderson. Norm.Anderson.
So, and we welcome new topics. We hope to keep doing this sort of thing in the future. And then finally, my last comment is, these guys have worked really hard over the last year. Thanks to the AGOL team for diving in, figuring out what this is and how we might be able to use it. And hopefully more to come. So hats off to you guys.
And, thank you. If you want my contact information, it's up here at the front. There's a card there. I guess that wraps it up for today. Like I said, if you have any individual questions afterwards that you want to ask, you can come up and we can talk to you while we're shutting things down. Thank you.